church planter can walk 20 miles in a day. Give him a bicycle and he can go 3 times as far and be 3 times as effective. Well, God bless you, and thank you so much for joining me as we continue our chronological study through the entire New Testament. And our study today brings us to a new chapter in Matthew chapter 24. And you may or you may not know that Matthew 24 and 25 are what are known as the Olivet Discourse, simply because Jesus spoke the words that are recorded in these 2 chapters in Matthew's Gospel from the Mount of Olives. And it all started with a question that his disciples asked him as they were sitting there overlooking Jerusalem. And so we're going to start here in Matthew chapter 24 and verse number 1. We're also going to compare Matthew's version with Mark and Luke's versions as well, because this has got to be one of the most interesting sections of the Gospels. I love it, and we're going to just take our time and see what we can learn, okay? I don't have all the answers, so let me prepare you. There are still some mysteries. All right, Matthew chapter 24 and verse number 1, we read, Jesus came out from the temple. This is in Jerusalem. He's just, days away from being crucified. And he was going away when his disciples came up to point out the temple buildings to him. And he said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Truly I say to you, not one stone here will be left upon another which will not be torn down." Now that was an astounding statement, and if you can see the temple in Christ's day, you would be astounded as the apostles no doubt were astounded. You can't see the temple today. Of course, it was destroyed. It happened just as Jesus predicted, not one stone left upon another. It happened about 40 or so, a little less than 40 years later, 70 AD. Now, you can, however, get some idea as to how large the stones were that made up the temple, because when they were torn down by the Roman armies in 70 AD, they were tossed over down into the valley and in the front part of the elevated platform that was in front of the temple and part of the Temple Mount complex there. And those stones, I've been there and seen them because archaeologists have uncovered them and cleared away the debris of centuries to reveal them, and they are absolutely huge. And if you go to what remains of that temple compound, what is known today as the Western Wall, or Gentiles refer to it as the Wailing Wall. It's where you see the pictures of all the Jewish men and women praying there and putting their little prayer requests in between the cracks of those walls. Well, if you look at those stones, they're massive. There's a part where you can walk back in that's been excavated underground along that original wall. And I mean, those stones are absolutely humongous. Okay, and so for anyone to tear them down, it wasn't like you could just walk up with a baseball bat and knock a stone out of its place. These are not bricks. These are massive stones that would require horses, many horses with ropes and so forth tied around those stones to systematically, calculatingly destroy them and pull them off one by one. And that's exactly what happened in 70 AD. And so Jesus' word came to pass. Now, no doubt it was shocking to the disciples who heard that, because they realized, boy, if that's going to happen, it's going to have to be something cataclysmic. It's either going to be the end of the world, or there's going to be an invading army that is highly motivated to disassemble this temple stone by stone. And so they were naturally very interested in what Jesus said and naturally wanted to know when it was going to happen. Okay, it's going to happen in their lifetime? That would be the preeminent question. Well, so they apparently left the temple area and crossed down the Kidron Valley and then up onto the Mount of Olives, and there they are seated. And if we jump over to Mark's Gospel, verse number 3 of Mark chapter 13, we read that Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew, there's the four guys who I couldn't remember everyone, were questioning him privately. And so most times when you see a modern day photograph of Jerusalem, it is taken from the viewpoint of the Mount of Olives. And between Jerusalem and the camera is the Kidron Valley. And nowadays when you get that view, you always see that very dominant Muslim mosque, the Dome of the Rock with that golden dome. But when Jesus would have sat there with the disciples, that wasn't even dreamed up yet. That would come hundreds of years later. They would see this magnificent temple complex seated right in that location, and they could see the wall of Jerusalem and so forth. And so it was a magnificent place to sit and gaze and look at the temple, but that was the backdrop for when they asked him these certain questions related to what he had just predicted, that there wouldn't be one stone left upon another. Can you imagine that? Sitting there on the Mount of Olives and looking at this huge, magnificent edifice that took decades ultimately to build, not just the temple, of course, but the platform upon which the temple sat. There was this huge retaining wall that was built, which is today known as the Western Wall, that circled around it. And I mean, it was just huge. And to think that one day you're going to look there and it's not going to be there, that would have been a real shockaroo to the disciples. So they want to find out, and that's why they ask him. So we jump back now to Matthew's Gospel and verse number 3 of Matthew chapter 24. As he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Matthew doesn't tell us which ones, Mark did, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And that's very interesting how Matthew recorded their questioning and their questions, because there were several. When will these things happen? This destruction of the temple. And then what will be the sign of your coming? You wonder, why would they ask about the sign of his coming, and also of the end of the age? There's really three questions there. And certainly if we continue to read, and as we continue to read, we'll see that Jesus answers all three of those questions. But it's very, very important to keep that in mind, that that's going to be the subject matter as Jesus answers those questions. He's not just going to talk about the destruction of the temple. He's going to talk about his coming and the end of the age. Okay, well, this is a real cliffhanger. Let me tell you, it's really exciting. Man, I can't wait to talk some more about it. So I'll see you next time.
HeavenWord 7 is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you. Thank you.